Be a part of the best pro wrestling podcast today by supporting the Going In Raw Patreon. You can enjoy access to the live taping of the show, exclusive merchandise, and patron-only episodes, and so much more. Support Going In Raw today. Click the link in the description. Hey friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
The recent face and heel turns of Seth Rollins and the Usos had us thinking about the delicate art of the turn. And yesterday we looked at how the best heel and face turns were crafted and executed.
But for every good turn, there's half a dozen crap turns. And no, we're not talking about the myriad times Big Show and Kane have gone from heel to face and back. We'd be here all damn day if we did that.
Yeah, so besides those ones, here are the worst heel and face turns in pro wrestling history. Sgt Slaughter! The WWE has never been a company that shies away from using real-world events in their programming as fodder for storylines, and in the 1980s and 90s, they usually didn't stop to think if doing so was maybe, just maybe, completely and totally classless.
Spoiler alert, it was! One of the most egregious examples of this is when Sgt Slaughter, the living embodiment of the American military, turned heel and became an Iraqi sympathizer as the United States was going to actual war with Iraq.
He even had his picture taken with Saddam Hussein. As part of the storyline, I think Saddam was probably too busy to actually take a picture with Slaughter. So the WWF thought it was totally fine to trivialize actual war for a goofy-ass storyline, which saw Slaughter take the world title off the Ultimate Warrior and hold it until Hulk Hogan could then claim it back. Lana! Both Rusev and Lana were virtual unknowns to wrestling fans when they debuted on the main roster in 2014, unless they had watched them earlier in NXT. But Rusev was instantly booked as a monster heel, and Lana was portrayed as the beauty who controlled the beast.
The high point of their early run was undoubtedly Rusev's entrance at WrestleMania 31 when he came to the ring in a real tank. And a pretty sweet jacket, too.
Shortly thereafter, rumors began to spread on the dirt sheets that Vince wanted Lana to be the face of the entire Diva division. And seeing that she was getting over with the crowd, decided it was better to have his top diva not be a heel.
So he split her from Rusev, turned her face, and paired her with, randomly, Dolph Ziggler. Right away, everything about this new arrangement felt off. For one, Lana was always portrayed as the most powerful member of the Rusev-Lana duo, which made for an interesting dynamic between the two and gave her character some depth.
And they played off each other perfectly, which made sense since they were a real-life couple. Lana and Dolph somehow formed a charisma vacuum, and that problem was compounded by making the once powerful, ravishing Russian into a doting valet, stripping her of virtually everything that made her such a captivating performer.
Crowds picked up on how awful their pairing was almost immediately, and try as Rusev might to breathe some life into the feud, the angle was thankfully scrapped when Lana and Rusev announced their engagement to TMZ.
Rusev was literally the only person in that feud who came out looking better. Dolph Ziggler still makes me laugh. He said, "I have a cold fish, I name it Lana." Oh, that was great. The perfect swerve! Curt Hennig's arrival in WCW was a big deal. The wrestler formerly known as Mr. Perfect had a successful, if injury-plagued, run in WWF, and his debut brought a charismatic and technically sound wrestler to the roster.
And Hennig really seemed like hot stuff when Arn Anderson offered him a spot, his spot in the Four Horsemen, who were kind of faces at the time. Thing is, Hennig was fresh off of betraying DDP in a tag match. You'd think Ric Flair, long known as the dirtiest player in the game, would be wary of inviting such a character into his stable.
But he did, and the newly constituted Horsemen were set to take on the NWO at Fall Brawl 97 in a War Games match.
But then the NWO jumped Hennig earlier in the day, leaving his arm in a sling. Curt came out anyway during the night's main event, one would suspect to support his fellow horsemen.
But no, he betrayed them and joined the NWO. It was all terribly underwhelming because, like we said earlier, Hennig had already backstabbed DDP during his short time in WCW. Flair really should have seen it coming.
And by that point, the NWO was ballooning in size and starting their descent into irrelevancy. I mean, we love Mr. Perfect,
yeah,
but even he couldn't use his immense talents to save this heel turn, much less the NWO.
But at least he introduced the term swerved into our lexicon. We used to swerve each other all the time back in college, like when I secretly ate the banana bread your parents sent you.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
I swerved the hell out of all your brownies.
I know, what a pain in the ass. Good guy Miz! Say what you will about the Miz, he's one of the last true heels we have left in the WWE. Guys like Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens, even Rusev, tend to be naturally too entertaining for fans not to cheer them at least a bit. But the Miz hasn't ever really played that hand, or at least not since him and John Morrison were teaming together. They could actually be kind of funny together.
And so he's really good at being a guy who gets actual heel heat, a rarity in today's business.
So when he tried out a face turn in 2012, it didn't go over well. Even adding Ric Flair to the picture didn't help matters. Miz was still just Miz. It was weird. It's like putting mayonnaise on a hot dog. It wasn't long before he went back to being a heel where he belongs.
I like mayonnaise on my hot dog sometimes. It wasn't long after that he teamed with his stunt double Damien Mizdow, and although it's easy to credit Sandow for how over that angle was, it wouldn't have been nearly as successful without Miz playing the arrogant heel role.
My favorite angle of the Miz's is when he played the part of the guy who sat down the bar for me at an empty Hooters watching a WWE pay-per-view in the early aughts.
That was just an actual incident, not a wrestling angle.
That actually happened, yeah. The corporate rattlesnake! The Stone Cold Mr. McMahon rivalry went about as far as it could go during its span from 1998 to 1999, so when the Rattlesnake returned from a 9-month hiatus to rehab his surgically repaired neck in April of 2000, the WWF did what they try to do so often: milk more out of it!
But instead of finding new and inventive ways to keep the rivalry heated, they turned the still white-hot face Austin heel by having him collude with Vince to get the belt off The Rock at WrestleMania 17.
Instantly, the fans were so confused as to how to react. It just seemed gross, like if your parents started making out in front of you. Like, you like your parents, they're cool, but you don't want to see them swapping spit.
What a weird analogy.
I know, right?
But I guess I see your point. Most of the crowd was geeked to see Stone Cold win, so I think the lack of real reaction was simply denial.
Yeah, there simply was no real reason for his heel turn, so no one saw anything legit about it. His heel run ended up being fairly entertaining though, but that's just because Stone Cold was a talented comedic actor, and that's how he ended up playing his heel persona, singing Kumbaya on the guitar, being overly affectionate to Vince, and wearing cowboy hats with Kurt Angle.
Eventually he turned back face, but within 2 years Austin was forced to retire due to neck issues. His heel turn wasn't nearly the dramatic moment a la Hogan's NWO heel turn, because people still really love the anti-authoritarian Austin and like to see him open cans of whoop-ass on people.
Now he opens cans of audio whoop-ass on his excellent podcast. What's in the cans we open on our podcast, Larson? Mayonnaise and hot dogs. Michael Cole! Okay, here's the thing. Michael Cole actually made for a pretty effective heel. He can be smarmy, he's got a goofy face, and he turned heel back when he was still doughy and not ripped like he is today.
The big problem with the Michael Cole heel turn to lead up to WrestleMania 27 was that he was a play-by-play guy, so if we didn't give a single shit about Cole's storyline, we still had to listen to him be a heel during every match on Raw.
Which made Raw even more unwatchable at the time, which was saying something, since that was also the lead up to Mania that saw The Miz hold the championship title.
Thankfully, Cole's match against Jerry Lawler at WrestleMania saw the end of their feud, and Cole went back to being a normal play-by-play guy, and now he's flanked by Corey Graves and Byron Saxton on Raw, and the days of Cole running around in a wrestling singlet and headgear are long gone.
Like, in a vacuum, it's actually pretty funny, and he made a decent heel.
As long as he wasn't doing commentary, it'd been fine.
But he did it. Goldberg spares the fans! One of the many factors that led to the demise of WCW was their inability to build on the momentum from their successes. The NWO was brilliantly executed in the beginning, eventually became bloated, split in two, reformed, split, and reformed again.
The Vigilante Crow-like version of Sting was fantastic until he aligned with the NWO Wolfpack and started wearing greasy red face paint.
And of course, Goldberg, the most over face the company had, was white hot upon winning the WCW World title from Hogan on July 6, 1998. But instead of building on his momentum from this, they ended his undefeated streak and booked him to lose the title to Kevin Nash in December of that year after Scott Hall used a taser on Bill.
A year and a half later, they turned him heel as he aligned with the New Blood at the Great American Bash, during which a half-dressed Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff joined him in the ring to celebrate the underwhelming victory of Jeff Jarrett over Kevin Nash for the big gold belt. The crowd's reaction seemed like a mix of grossed out because they could see Russo's exposed nipple and just kind of bored because Jarrett was now their world champ.
In a recent appearance on the Stone Cold podcast, Goldberg revealed that immediately following his heel turn, he demanded to be turned face again because he couldn't stand the thought of all the kids with serious illnesses he met with being disappointed in him.
So his heel turn was short-lived, and so was the rest of WCW. A year and a change later, they were bought by WWF.
It's the only heel turn I can think of that was sunk by Vince Russo's gross nipple. That's the only thing I can think of. Get me off the Lex Express! When the personification of pro wrestling, Hulk Hogan, left the WWF in 1993, who did they turn to replace the charisma, personality, and sheer fan appeal of Hulkamania?
The narcissist Lex Luger, who filled that void with dull facial expressions, rambling, incoherent promos, and a lot of red, white, and blue Zubaz pants.
I kind of like the Zubaz pants.
I do too.
Yeah. It all started when a contest was held to see who could body slam the 600-pound Yokozuna on the USS Intrepid. Exactly whose coked out idea this was is beyond us.
Probably Vince.
Yeah, but Luger arrived for this event in a helicopter and got the job done, which evidently was the most American thing a guy could do, because from then on he became the all-American Lex Luger and started some sort of bus tour campaign called the Lex Express.
Exactly what he was campaigning for is beyond us. Maybe it was to make American flag-themed tracksuits the new national uniform.
Certainly looked like it. I personally think the Lex Express was just Lex trying to figure out where the next WWF Live event was so he could do his job. Like he didn't know how to use a map, so he just claimed to travel from town to town so he could smile and flex in the general direction of people.
In any event, this attempt to replace the Hulkster culminated not in a world title run, but in a count-out victory over Yokozuna at SummerSlam, which ended with the entire Face locker room coming out and celebrating like he had actually won something tangible, like a belt.
Yeah, like an actual belt. A few years later, Luger quietly took his Lex Express to the Mall of America, where he stumbled upon a live taping of WCW Nitro, and just sort of stuck around and followed the company.
Do we pick on Luger too much?
Probably, but you gotta have some fun. Finger poke of doom! It's amazing how the NWO storyline went so wrong so fast. Sure, it was great at first, as we mentioned earlier in this video and in our best face and heel turn video, but as soon as their ranks started to grow, the entire thing just felt so watered down.
And then the NWO broke up. Hollywood Hogan continued to lead the still heel OG NWO, while Kevin Nash and a few others split from the group to form the babyface NWO Wolfpack. And while the theme song was fantastic, the whole thing felt kind of weird from the get-go.
Yeah, it did. Pretty soon, Lex Luger and Sting, two stalwart defenders of the WCW banner, were now for life. And if anything cheapens the appeal of the New World Order, it's Luger.
Nonetheless, the group was over huge. Even I had a Wolfpack t-shirt.
What a mark.
Kevin Nash also happened to be one of the bookers for WCW at the time. So what did he do? Book himself in a WCW world title match against the still undefeated Goldberg at Starrcade. Oh wait, actually, he booked himself to win.
Granted, it came with the help of Scott Hall, but to end Goldberg's undefeated streak like that was an enormous letdown.
Nash offered Goldberg a rematch, but then Goldberg got arrested for stalking Miss Elizabeth. So who shows up to lay claim to the title? Hogan, returning to TV for the first time since his retirement just a month prior.
The Wolfpack and OG NWO had been battling since the faction split, and this match seemed set to serve as a blow-off to their feud. But
then the match started. Hogan lightly pushed his index finger into Nash's chest. Nash flew backwards as if he'd been hit by a damn bus. Hogan covered him, got the 1, 2, 3, and was declared the new World Championship Wrestling Champion.
Members of both the OG NWO and the Wolfpack came out to the ring to celebrate, and to the bewilderment of everyone in attendance and the millions watching at home, the band was back together.
That incident was emblematic of what was wrong with WCW, and the main event on that night's Raw only served as a reminder why the WWF had overtaken Nitro in the ratings, for that was the night that Mick Foley became champion. Then WCW went and hired Vince Russo to right the ship.
And by right the ship, we mean send the ship careening right into an iceberg called Titan Sports Acquisition. So those were the worst heel and face turns we could think of. Let us know what we missed in the comments. There's plenty to choose from.
Yeah, and check out our video we did yesterday of the best heel and face turns.
That's right, yeah. So anyways, I'm gonna go turn heel on a ham sandwich out there. I'm gonna eat it.